very good evening to one and all present here. I begin today by acknowledging the contribution of our forefathers who have helped in creating a world based on freedom and human dignity. I extend my respect to people of diverse cultures, faith, color, and gender, and pledge to work for equity, inclusivity, peace, and harmony. I, Rishita Seth, along with my co-host Ayush Sharma, students of DME Media School, welcome you to the 6th edition of world's first 7-day staggered collocation conference ICAN6. ICAN6 is organized by DME Media School in collaboration with the School of Communication and Creative Arts, Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia, and is sponsored by the Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR. This time, ICAN6 is organized in a staggered format, which will take place at 4 different venues across India and abroad. Phase 1 will be held in Delhi-Metropolitan Education, Noida, from 19 to 21st June, and Manav Rachna International Institute of Research and Studies, Faridabad, on 22nd June. Phase 2 will be in Makhanlal Chaturvedi University of National and of Journalism and Communication, Bhopal, on 21st July, and Daffodil International University, Bangladesh, on 5th and 6th August 2023. I would like to take a moment and introduce Delhi Metropolitan Education to our audience. Delhi Metropolitan Education is an A-grade premier educational institute affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, New Delhi, and approved by the Bar Council of India. DME Media School is one of the most promising media institutes in the country. It offers BA in Journalism and Mass Communication. It is recognized as a school focused on the growth of its faculty and students through academic and co-curricular activities. Now I would like to invite my co-host Ayush Sharma to take the session forward.
ICAN6 has come with the theme Identity, Culture, Agenda-Driven Newscast with the hashtag Cultural Identity for Diversity. ICAN6 has support of more than 21 partners. The conference is sponsored by Indian Council of Social Science Research. Conference partners are INCR Gen Section and Global Media Education Council. Knowledge partners are Manav Rachna International Institute of Research and Studies, Faridabad, Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Communication, Bhopal, Adams University, Kolkata, Institute of Applied Medicines and Research, Ghaziabad, and KSF, Keshav Suri Foundation. International partners are Daffodil International University, Bangladesh, Institute for International Journalism, Ohio University, USA, and Deakin House National University, Pakistan. The masterclass is being organized in collaboration with Institute for International Journalism, Ohio University, USA. Media partners are The Policy Times, Jai Hind Times, Quick News, and News 44. ICAN6 is powered by Asian Media and Cultural Studies Network, Australia, India Film Practitioners and Research Network, the Student Council of DME Media School, SPARC, RIM, a research center of DME Media School, Richmond Fellowship Society, Delhi branch. Since 2018, DME Media School has been organizing the international conference ICAN. The themes for the previous editions were India and Changing Aspect of News, ICAN1, Indian Cinema and Alternate Networks, ICAN2, Issues of Community Agenda and News, ICAN3, Information, Communication and Artificial Networks, ICAN4, and this year, Inclusivity, Convergence and Alternate Negotiations, ICAN5, and this year, Identity, Culture, Agenda-Driven Newscast, ICAN6. This unique conference is conceptualized by Dr. Amrish Saxena, Professor and Dean of DME Media School. He is the convener of ICAN6. I request sir to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Ayush. It's a matter of great pride and privilege that this session is happening on the second day evening with Professor Dhiman Chattopadhyay, who is kind enough to join in this session from the USA. And as this whole conference has been talked about, it is for such kind of deliberations which are really need of the hour in media education, And that is how every year we try to decide the theme for the conference, which is reflective of the societal needs. And media education cannot be looked at in isolation. It has to be looked into in relationship to the society, the issues not only within the country, but all geopolitical issues, the issues of identity at the international level, and the cultural differences which are causing a lot of miseries in different parts of the world. Since it's a research-based conference, so we need to have some such sessions also which are directly oriented to research and publication. And that is where Professor Chattopadhyay has come to our help, because this whole session is devoted to publications. And all those people, I mean, all of us who are into education, in higher education, and we need to do a lot of researches, and then we need to publish that all in journals and in books. In India, if we look at the scenario, then for any PhD student, they need to get published in journals which are of repute, and obviously either it could be the peer-reviewed journals, or there's a whole listing that has been done in India by UGC. So it has to be UGC listed journal, index journal, and then also the Scopus journal. So all that is there. And I have seen myself, since I'm associated with so many universities in different capacities, either as an expert in the BOS or in DRCs, that students, the research scholars struggle a lot on this count. And even if they get published, after some time, it is discovered that it's a clone. So all these problems are faced. I believe that this lecture of Professor Chattopadhyay will be of great help to all teachers, all research scholars who are fighting this problem as to what all is to be kept in mind while you are doing research and writing an article, and then to decide where it is to be published, how the journal is to be selected and all. So I will request Professor Chattopadhyay to include all such aspects also in his lecture. So without further delaying the session, I stop here, and I'm looking forward to a very fruitful session for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to share that Journalism at TME is the official newsletter of TME Media School. This fortnightly publication covers all the major activities happening in and out the campus. It is a student-centric newsletter carried out entirely by them under the supervision of our faculty members. DME TV is our official YouTube channel where you can find the playlist related to all the sessions, lecture series, film festivals, and conferences. For more information, follow us on our social media handles and YouTube channel DME TV. Today we all are here for the second masterclass on the topic Writing and Publishing Academic Books. The resource person of the session is Dr. Dhiman Chattopadhyay. Sir is the Associate Professor of Communication, Journalism and Media at Shippensburg University at Pennsylvania, USA. His area of specialization is journalism and strategic communication. Dr. Chattopadhyay's profession experience includes 20 years as a reporter bureau chief and executive editor at newspapers and magazines such as Times of India, Midday, Business Today, and the Asian Age. Sir's research examines the effect of digital media on gatekeeping, news framing practices, and emerging challenges for media organization. Dr. Chattopadhyay is the author of 2 books, India Journalism and the Impact of Social Media, was published in 2022 by Palgrave Macmillan. His second book, an edited volume titled Global Journalism in Comparative Perspective, Case Studies in Journalistic Practice, is currently in press with Routledge. Sir will conduct this masterclass on the topic Writing and Publishing Academic Books. Now I request Dr. Dhiman to take the session forward.
Thank you, Rishita, and thank you, Ayush and Dr. Saxena, Dr. Maheshwari, Dr. Bala, and others who helped in organizing this, and Dr. Srivastav, Dr. Jatin Srivastav from OU, who got in touch with me. We have worked together in the past over several years, remodeling syllabus and actually restarting a program in Nepal for an university and so on. At the outset, thank you for inviting me for this session. It's an honor to be part of ICAN6. I've known and kind of taken part and heard about ICAN for the last 5 years, so it's an honor to be here. And of course, to meet all of you. Dr. Saxena did mention journal publication as a very important part of scholarship, and that is a global phenomena. It is very good that Indian universities are also focusing on it, but like many of the things in India, sometimes, as Dr. Saxena mentioned, that we have these expectations, but not always the groundwork ready for it, not always the everything else like the training, the understanding is not always ready. We've built the house, but not necessarily the roads and the waterways. And that can lead to some issues. So I will try to also talk about journal publications, but as you can understand, in a 35-minute talk, I can't talk about books and journals. I have actually conducted workshops on how to publish in journals. I think a year and a half back, again with Ohio University's IIJ and some universities in India. I'm happy to do a complete session at a later date just on journal publications and some of the issues that crop up, like methodology and other areas where usually reviewers crack down, and what kind of journal. But mainly I'll talk about books today, because very often, and I will share a PowerPoint, I have shared this PowerPoint with the ICAN team, as well as a couple of files, which I think all those attending could be helped, because that is how to draft a proposal. So I've got templates of blank proposals with the questions, and then a filled out one, which I had submitted successfully. So kind of giving you a template of, well, this is how, not the best possible way maybe, but this is a good way to write it. So again, many of us have this dilemma. We have an idea, we are excited about it. We know that it possibly has the potential to be a book or a monograph, or maybe multiple chapters, but we don't know how to go about it. You just can call up a publisher and say, I have a book idea. Do you want to publish it? I mean, you know, maybe that can happen if you wrote Harry Potter before this. But if you haven't, then it's sometimes hard for us to just say, I want to write a book. So how do we go about writing a book? What are some of the steps? Please feel free to put in questions in the chat, or if you have a question, because it's such a large room, I can't necessarily say, stop me and ask me a question at any stage. That's what I usually do in classes, but I don't want to mess around with 80 people in the room. So feel free to note those questions and ask me. So the first thing is, when you have the idea, you have a great idea that you want to pitch. How do you go about pitching it? Now, I have been lucky in both my books so far, and the third book, which I didn't talk about here, which is currently in the proposal stage, is that publishers have kind of reached out and said, do you have, the first one, it was like, do you have anything that you can make into a book from Macmillan? How does that happen? And that is something Dr. Saxena also referred to in his initial talk. If you can get a journal article out, a book chapter out, even co-authored with your professor, that's a very good way to start. As a PhD scholar, I did not always think I can go myself all alone. You have to start with someone who knows the business. And if you can get 1 or 2 joint co-authored articles out, publishers take note. They know then this is an area this person is interested in. So even if you reach out to them, they can Google you, so to speak, and find out, okay, if not, not a problem. You should draft a 2-page proposal, 1 page, 2 page, something that is more than a 500-word abstract, something that addresses some of the questions that publishers will have. Who are you? Why do you think this book is important? What kind of a market are you looking for? Like, who's going to read this book? Students, or faculty members, or research scholars, or general public, right? Some of these, are there any competitions like to this book that we should be aware of? So which is why I have attached some of the templates later. What are the kind of questions you should anticipate before you submit an initial proposal? Because you don't want to be the person emailing saying, I have an idea. Do you think it can be a book? Because that's 2 steps backward. They may not even respond. If you already address some of the questions that they're likely to ask, like good students and good teachers, people are happy that they know what we are about. They have studied about us, and now they're submitting. These are people who are likely to write the book on time, right? Once the publisher gets back to you, in my case, as I'll share, they got back and said, let's meet at a conference where we are there, or let's talk over Zoom. And can you submit a more detailed proposal than these 2 pages of what you've said, which is exciting? At that stage, you should submit the longer 15, 20-page proposal. Now, sometimes they will not send you a template because they're seeing how prepared you are. One smart thing to do at this stage is talk to a published author, somebody who has published a book with a publisher and who knows the format of submitting, saying, can you share with me? And you will have it in all your own universities, your professors who've done it. If you're a young faculty member who needs it from somebody else, like all of you in this room, feel free to reach out to me for any consulting, saying, I'm doing this, can you just check if this is okay? Or can you share with me what are some questions I should address? Or is there a template you can share, which I have shared with you from both Macmillan and Routledge, Taylor and Francis. So you can see at least 2 of the larger academic publishers, what is it that they look for? That is usually a fairly detailed proposal. It's 15 to 20 pages. And really that proposal is kind of like a PhD proposal in a much smaller way. It makes you think of what am I doing? How good is my idea fitting with what I want to do? For example, my second book, the edited volume, I initially pitched it as a textbook. I wanted it as a textbook for international journalism. When the publishers saw what I had in mind, they wrote back to me saying, this is a great idea, but we don't think this is a textbook. This is a book that can be a reference book and a textbook, maybe, but mainly for people who are interested in scholarship, who want to know how journalism functions in different parts of the world, and there is no set rule, all the different aspects. So they moved me to a different editor who did academic books and not textbooks. And now it's maybe 3 months away from publication. It's a long process, and I should add at this stage, as with journal publication, you have to be patient. For both my books, from the date they said, let's talk, to the day the book got published, it was a 2-year period. It can be less, it can be a year if you're completely ready with everything. If it's an edited volume, there are some things. So when my first book, this one, this is a solo authored book. So I knew what was going to be in it, but I had to change a lot of things. For example, if it's your PhD thesis, your advisor will say, you need to focus on methodology and research theory. But as a book, very few people want to know about the details of the theory. They want to know, what did you go to find out? And what did you find out? And what does that mean for us, right? They want to know the story. But your PhD advisor wants to know, very rightfully, the process you've done, because have you done it right? The book assumes you did it right. So you have to change a lot of chapters around, increase the length of some, decrease. So this is the stage when you're writing the proposal, you're thinking of, I need to move this from a PhD thesis to a book. What would people want to read? So this proposal is helping you. If it's an edited volume, like my second book, 16 or 17 chapters, maybe, I wrote to 35 people. 25 said yes. So I was in trouble initially. But older people, more experienced people told me, don't worry, 5 people will drop out or more. 7 people dropped out, including people who said, I'm submitting next week. So in the end, I ended up with 17 chapters, which is good. When you're doing that at this proposal stage, research each person. Don't just send it off to, dear Ayush, dear Dr. Saxena, dear Dr. Maheshwari, please write a chapter for me, because they don't know what you want, right? How can they'll ask you, like, what do you want? Because, I'm an expert in different areas. You are the book editor. Find out what are the 4 sections you're doing. Which 2 sections do you want to give Dr. Saxena, saying, do you have an idea in any of these 2 that you can contribute in? Here are some ideas to start you thinking, so that they know where your mind is going, right? There needs to be synchrony between the 2 people, the two editors, the 2 writers. And make sure you have enough people for each subsection. Edited volume is a different beast, as I found out. So this is an example of me writing a letter to a professor in Canada saying, please write a chapter for me. And I've explained what the book is about. I've attached something. I've said who else are writing, right? Areas and ways in which you excite somebody else to write for your chapter, right? So there is a long process when you're doing an edited volume, even at this proposal stage. Along with that letter, I sent this, what I just talked about. So I sent this call out to everybody I invited saying, here is a deadline. And if you look at the date, you'll see the deadline was May 31, 2021. We are in June 2023. We are 3 months away from publication. That's the start date for my ideation. I'm sitting 2 years later on the cusp of publication of that book. So it's a long period, right? Because people take time to write. We take time to edit. In a solo authored book, you take time to write. So there's a lot of topics you need to think about. So when you're writing a book, whether it's your own book or it's an edited volume, there's a lot of thinking that goes on, which is exciting. You are shaping what you want to do. You have an idea that is different from other books. So you're telling people, and you're researching, you're saying, these are things that other people have done. These are a couple of things that people have not done. Today, if I were to put in an idea, I would put in artificial intelligence in journalism, right? And the effects of artificial intelligence, whether or not we can live without it, which is a rhetorical question, we must live with it. So how must we live with it, right? And I'll ask somebody who's an expert on that to write a chapter or maybe a whole subsection when I get people to debate it in different countries. So you have to keep your mind sharp. Now you're submitting the proposal. You should also research, just like in a journal article, you research a journal, don't you? Is this journal more likely to take qualitative articles or quantitative articles? Because let's say you're a qualitative scholar who does interviews and focus groups, and this journal, 90%, you're submitting to JMCQ, Journalism and Mass Communication Quarterly. 85% of articles are purely quantitative. The market for qualitative journal articles there are small. Whereas if you are an intercultural communication person and you start submitting to the Journal of Intercultural Communication, an NCA publication, that is a mix of qualitative and quantitative. So you know you have a better chance there. Some are more focused. Similarly, when you're thinking of a book, figure out if Macmillan is doing a book series. I found out that they're actually just launching a series on journalism in the Global South, edited by Saban Angvi and Bruce Mutsvairo, 3 people based in 3 parts of the world. And I said, well, I can do this and I think I can be a part of that series. They said, yes, that's a great idea. So, and they're happy that you looked up one of their things. So they're more keen to have you on board now. Is there somewhere your idea can fit in? Or is it a textbook? What kind of textbooks do they publish, right? For the edited volume, like I said, they shifted editors for me. They said, no, you're not right for this group. You're right for that group. For the solo authored book, I was good. So select, just like we select students, you sometimes, when you're taking an elective class, you select a professor, right? I want to attend that professor's class. Similarly, select a publisher and pitch an idea based on the publisher. Just like when you apply for a job, we tell you, don't always apply, put the same application letter to all 10 universities because 10 of them look for different people, right? They're asking you to teach different classes. Their structures are different. So yes, don't lie, but pitch the side of you that best fits their needs. Similarly, when you're pitching to a publisher, keep in mind, they have needs just as you have needs. You don't have to be inauthentic or dishonest, be 100% honest, but there are aspects of your book that appeal to people and appeal to people, depending on which publisher you're asking for. Much like the cell phone that you hold in your hand, a 20-year-old and a 50-year-old has the same cell phone, but they will appreciate different uses for the phone, right? So you pitch it accordingly. This is how, again, the first book got off the ground. We just met at a conference. You know, AJMC was happening and Mala, then since then she moved, a different editor finished the book. She met me during the conference. We had a talk about the book and where it could fit in, as you can see, in the Global South. that book series. And then she says, how long will you take? And I said, 6 to 8 months. I ended up taking 10 months to finish it. Once I submitted it, they took, like initially I submitted a proposal, as you'll see. They took 4 months to get back to me, and they got back to me with revisions. So that brings me to the contract section. I think this is the most important part, other than writing, of course. Be prepared, be patient, because you can't control a lot of things when outsiders are checking your work, right? You submit your proposal, much like a journal, much like your PhD thesis goes to an external examiner. This goes out to unknown external examiners. I have reviewed books, and I know, later I knew one of my books was reviewed by somebody I know well in India, the proposal. I've taught in that university for 10 years as a guest faculty, so I know the dean and director well. It feels like on the job market, I'm applying and I don't know if I'll be selected or not. And then they come back and say, well, you have 10 problems. That's okay. Be patient. Don't get angry. They're the reviewers. They're suggesting. If something is not possible, say that. No, this was my intention, not that. If there are issues that you can fix, fix it, right? So there's a 3-4 month wait. You have to be patient at that point. Do not change your book idea. It's your book, not theirs. If somebody tells you to change your book, that's the time to step back and say, I'm sorry, I can't change my book. I'll look for another publisher, right? So hold your head high. You don't have to change it to suit somebody else. Like if somebody tells me, this is politically this way, make it that way. That's not me. I'm not going to change my book because you think differently, right? This is your book. But don't start major editing till you sign the contract. Once you sign the contract, you have a commitment with them. Till then, how many times will you change something, right? If it's a different publisher. So again, this is just an example where I submitted it and I did not change anything because they got back to me, Rutledge, saying, great idea, not a textbook. I'm sorry. I'd like to recommend the book for a series belonging elsewhere. Let's introduce you to Suzanne and pick up the conversation. At this stage, I'm like, I don't know if this book will be with them. So I contracted a third publisher, but luckily Suzanne Richardson got back quickly and said, no, great idea, let's go ahead, right? And so we took off pretty quickly. Now you sign the contract and suddenly you feel very powerful, but at the same time, your clock has started ticking, okay? I'll stop in 10 minutes and I'll take questions after that. So read the fine print very carefully. Many of us are so excited, we don't read. But are we getting a lump sum? Are we getting royalty? No, it's an academic book. You're not writing a novel. You're not going to get rich writing it, but it's your book. Are you getting 5%? Are you getting $1,000? What is it that you're getting? In the first case, I got a lump sum. In the second case, I'm getting royalty. I'm okay with either. I just wanted to know. The deadline is very important. In the contract, they'll set you a deadline, but you can change it. You can say, I think that's unrealistic. Can I move it a month ahead? Not too much, because then they'll lose interest. If you think you'll be done by November 30, tell them December 30. We all know this, right? Because then we'll be early instead of late. If it's an edited volume like the last one, that was a nightmare. I told contributors 8 months in advance that I wanted it actually 2 months before I actually wanted it. Half the people submitted, half the people didn't. Kept pushing. I extended beyond the deadline. I asked for a 15-day extension. And then people said, I'm going to submit tomorrow, and they didn't. But I have to work with it. And you'll always have to work with it. That people around the world, around the country, some people will have issues and they can't submit. Give them a deadline that is 2 months in advance. Don't lose sleep over other people because you can't control it. Give them a deadline. Ensure chapter contracts are signed, and don't start major editing till you sign the contract. Okay. And this is just proof of how it comes through, that we've got the contract for you, sign it, and we are ready. So now you're preparing your final manuscript. At this point, what happens with many people is that they're so relieved that they've got the contract, now the book is theirs, that there's a drop in the adrenaline. And before you know it, from 8 months, you're now down to 3 months left. Because you're like, I'm writing a book, I'm writing a book. But you've not written it. It's still to be written, right? For my first book, That was a problem. I had it ready. I thought, I just have to change a couple of chapters, take out this chapter, add this. And then I realized I had 2 months left. And then I worked 10 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours writing it. And that's not a good idea. So from my own experience, I would say set clear writing times and goals each week, even if it's 45 minutes. Initially, even if it's cleaning work, do it. Get involved in the book. If you need an extension, just like your assignment, seek it early. If you need permission for images, parts of chapter like you've published somewhere else in a journal, a small part of the book, get permission from that journal, because journals, especially international ones, like if they're in Australia or England or USA, they'll take time. They'll take a month and a half to get back sometimes. Okay. If it's an edited volume, make sure everybody knows the style you're following. Is it APA or MLA or Chicago? Imagine your nightmare if 16 people submit in 4 different reference styles, and you have to make them one because you're the editor, because the publisher won't do that. They'll just say, we need some corrections here, right? They'll proof it, but it's not always their job to do APA to MLA, MLA to Chicago. You should have told people that, right? Make sure they all know and remind them. And remind them 30 days, 15 days, whatever days you want before the deadline. Hey, deadline coming up. Are you good? Are you good? Once you've submitted it, don't think your job is over, because publishers will get back to you, as they had last month with my second book. 26 cover choices. Which one do you want? And you have to think again, what is my book about? And all of you are communication folks. You know that half the battle is won visually. When you look at 6 magazines on the rack, you pick up the one where the headline appeals to you, where the picture appeals to you, where it looks nice and the title is exciting. So not only the title, which is set, but what is the background? What is the color? What do you think will go well? Who will pick up, gray or red, blue or white? Even those simple things. If you've done design, you should know the importance of design here. You might need endorsements, like at the back of the book, you have people writing, famous people writing good things about your book. For this one, I got it early. I got it from Lars Wilnat and other people famous across the world. And the Jyotika Ramaprasad, who's here for your conference, she wrote an endorsement for this. And Dr. Deb Ikut, who many of you may have heard of, is the president of ICAN6 this year. And he's from India, of course. He wrote the foreword. But I got in touch with them 2.5 months early. For this second book, I'm struggling because few people dropped out of endorsements. They're like, sorry, we're really busy. We thought we could, and now I'm down to 2 and I need 1 more. As it has gone to press already, I'm trying for a 3rd one. Also think about how you want to market the book at this stage. These are academic publishers. They will not spend a lot of money marketing your book. However bizarre that sounds, because they'll lose money if they don't market it. But it's your book, right? You want to market it. Take it to conferences. This AJMC in August, I think it's in Washington, D.C. I've told my publishers who come over from England, bring 50 copies of the book. And I'm going to pay for coffees and cookies. We're going to have 1 session where Dr. Ikut is going to talk about the book, this one. And then we're going to have a small Q&A and people are going to ask about it, create a buzz about the book. I'm in touch with the Indian arm of Macmillan saying, this is insanely expensive for Indian people. I mean, it's in dollars. Why don't we have an Indian price? And they've created an Indian price for the book now. So it is far more affordable to buy it in India instead of paying like 7,000 rupees, for a book. It can now be bought, I think, for closer to 2,000. The other thing that you need to do is indexing of the book. You've seen the index. Either you do it or they'll say, well, okay, we'll get it done for $300, but we'll take it out of your royalty. You're not paying me that much. I'll do it myself. And in both cases, I did it myself. My university funded that, so I didn't have to pay for it. But indexing is hard work. You have to know the book and say which are the important words that come out. And then finally, before I leave you with the book publishing idea and taking questions, some of you will ask, like, this is all good, but you know what? You got like 10 journal articles published, 2, 3 books. You've been a journalist for years. How does that apply to some of us? Like, how do we start? So prior publication records do not influence a publisher's decision to accept your idea or not. They will go purely by how good is your idea. And that you're a scholar, that you're a communication, journalism, media scholar is good enough. Okay. But if you do have things published before, that helps publishers get in touch with you. So by all means, start with a book chapter, possibly the easiest thing to do of the three: book chapters, journal articles, and books. Start with a book chapter, a co-authored book chapter with someone. Get to journal articles. Don't always aim for the sky. My personal theory is I submit to my dream journal, get rejected, take their feedback, submit a level below, get revised and resubmit, and then finally get accepted. In rare occasions, get rejected by them, go to the third level of journal and get published. But for the really good journal article that I wrote, I'll fight. I will not go below. I will stay at that level. But we all fight different battles. Sometimes your promotion's at stake. You must get published. Among the UGC ranked journals, you know, some are harder to get by, some are easier. It's okay. Nobody's judging you if you have a couple of articles published in the quote unquote lower ranked journals. As long as you also get, as you grow up, a few more in the higher ranked journals, right? Once you get a book chapter out with an established author, I started out like that. Shakuntala Rao's Indian Journalism, New Era in Indian Journalism, I have a chapter there. I was just out of my PhD school and she invited me and I'm like, do you think everybody else is a senior faculty there? He said, no, you got 20 years in journalism, you can do this. And I wrote that chapter and that was well appreciated. A couple of other chapters in books on mass media, diversity. And so I teach DEI in university as well. And as you can see, I think in my bio, I'm the director of the Ethnic Studies program. So that's also part of my research. I look at campus belongingness for diverse students and so on and so forth. That's another book idea. So even as I'm talking to you about a third book currently in the proposal, I have the fourth one in my head. So once you get these out of the way, publishers will reach out to you too, because they'll see what you've written and they'll say, or when you reach out to them, send them a link of something you've done so that they know, all right, this guy can deliver, this person can deliver. Some people and some wisdom has it that you should submit a full manuscript. That's not me. I do not submit full manuscripts to anyone because I'm sorry, first I sign a contract, then you get to see the full thing. Okay, that's just me. Also, if you think it's going to take you a year, don't submit the proposal at that stage. Submit a proposal when you're confident you can do this in the next 6 to 8 months maximum, once you're approved. Because a lot can change if you finish writing at that stage and that slowly, including like it happened with my second edited book, which was out of my control. Editors changed. Things like AI have come in and I'm saying this book is going to go out next month. I wish we had a chapter on AI. But, you know, back in January, February of last year, AI was not such a big thing yet. ChatGPT had not, you know, blown up everything. So those are things you have to live with, maybe the second edition, right? And so I'll leave you with those thoughts on publishing. I'm happy to take any questions I have. And journals, yes, I'm happy to talk about them in the Q&A stage. Of course, I couldn't put in everything in 35 minutes.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure listening to you. Now I request Dr. Manasvi Maheshwari, Associate Professor, DME Media School, to moderate the interaction session.
Thank you so much, sir. And actually, you have touched the very sensitive chord of all the scholars who are here today. So we were actually working on a book from, we are getting it published from Sage Publications. And for last like almost 1.5 years or more, I think it's almost 2 years now, we have been waiting for it to get, approved and published. So this is something which we all are struggling. And half of the time, the discussion in the faculty room is all about that. Like you said, every book takes 1.5 and 2 years, maybe. But sometimes we get confused about the topics, the issues we have picked up. So when it is in market after a year, 2 years, it's kind of, isn't it late? So we really get demotivated about it. But I don't know. You're saying it's like we know it's worldwide. So there is no other way how to handle this situation. And there are a lot of questions. I mean, I'm getting a lot of pings from my teammates that this problem we face and that problem we face. So what do you think that should be the right way? And we actually follow the guidelines. We follow what publisher gives us, but again, something or the other goes haywire. And, corrections, formats, such kind of things we face, it's very regular. We are not able
to... Sorry, go ahead.
So we are not able to bring it to that level at, many times, and that sometimes we lose, that value of our write-up or article or paper also. So how do we address those kind of issues?
So I think, yes, part of it, like I said, you can't control the winds, but you can adjust the sails. You cannot control some variables, like how a publisher will behave, because that's not in your control, or how a journal reviewer will behave, right? So one of the things, there's some things we can do. For example, when you submit the proposal, be at an advanced stage, be more confident in an edited volume that you will get this out. So contact, like for the second one, though, actually, I contacted all the folks even before, like 6 months before my contract was approved. And I told them, I'm at this stage, but we are confident with the kind of authors we have. It's a shoe in. And they had all agreed. They submitted their abstracts. So when I actually submitted the proposal, I had all chapter abstracts in, including a couple of chapters in, and no contract. So when the contract came, I could tell them, I'll deliver this in 6 months. Now, it's a different matter towards the end, people dropped out. That can also happen. But your own book, what you refer to, when you have books that can be dated, that's a challenge, I think, partly. I wouldn't say entirely dated. So again, take a step back and think about, what is the book idea I'm suggesting? Is this likely to get dated in 2 years? So this one, it'll be dated in another year. I have to get a second edition out. Social media's impact, it's changing as we speak, right? Because 2 years ago, we thought Twitter was the final thing in the world. Now we don't know if Twitter will survive Elon Musk's madness. So will this be something else tomorrow? People writing this book in 2015 would have talked about Flickr, and nobody had heard of Instagram at that point, forget TikTok. Things have changed. And so some books, yes, in the field that we are, over time, you have to revise it. So think about ideas, some ideas for your books that are not going to be dated. For example, a historical context. That's already dated. That will not be dated, right? Political things that are constant. Yes, a government may go and a government may come back, but political communication books remain relevant for a long period of time. Sometimes, and so think which one of them align with your interest areas. You don't pick an area because it's supposed to be current, even though I don't do it. Within what you do, what is relevant today and what is likely to be talked about, in your best opinion, right? Dr. Saxena mentioned, you mentioned at the beginning about diversity, equity, some of the issues that you face, some of the challenges that we face, those challenges are not going away. So any book, for example, on journalism education is going to be relevant for the next 10 years. Some aspects of it may come out, like, okay, government passes a policy 3 years from now, making one chapter backdated. Well, in the next edition, updated. But overall, this has been, some of the issues have been there since we were in college. So those are relevant issues. Right? But yes, sometimes it is frustrating when you have to wait 6 months and it comes back with, like when I got some of the reviews back, I independently wrote to the editor, saying, I can't respond to this comment because this comment is basically saying, why have you used these 2 theories? Those 2 theories are very important. That's rubbish. I will use the theories I want to use. And they said, okay, I've talked to the group editors, and they've said, ignore that. There will be biases. I have got reviews back where I can clearly see people saying, you have not read these 2 articles. Well, okay, that's because you wrote them. And yes, I'm going to say like, yes, I'm sorry, I've now included it. It's okay. It's a one-line fix. Please the ego. I have actually even got a review back asking me to read one of my own pieces. That was funny. You should do better to read such, including mine. I'm like, okay, you're telling me I'm not as good enough as I am, which is weird. But you'll get some of those things sometimes, and be patient with them. There is no second way to be patient. And in between, if you want to update something, go ahead. In fact, it pleases the reviewers and the publishers if you say, as we are waiting for 6 months, a couple of things have happened. So in this chapter, I'm including this, which tells the publisher we are now getting a more updated version, so we'll be more likely to sell this. You can turn that challenge into an opportunity if you want.
I have a lot of questions, but I think I give audience also a chance. So Dr. Sumedha Dasmana has joined from, she's an assistant professor in DME. Sumedha, you have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, sir. How are you, sir?
Hi. Good, I'm fine, Tom.
Yeah. Sir, actually, I have a question for you. When we are talking about academic writing, the objective is recognition, growth in profession. I want to understand what is your take when we are talking about the extent of financial gains through academic writing. Can we think on that?
Well, not directly in terms of writing a book and getting rich. Doesn't happen. Unless you're writing a textbook, you won't get rich, but you'll make a lot more money in royalties if you write a textbook than a purely scholarly academic book. At that point, I tell people, but ask yourself who you are. You're an academic. You got into this profession because you love teaching. You love doing what you're writing about. It's the labor of love. You're writing something for something called fame, something for recognition, and that's worth its weight in gold. Your money will come from your paycheck. But yes, writing books, getting journals published does help financially because that's your route to promotion as well. And when you do get promoted, you get more money. You write enough and you get well known, you get invited to deliver lectures abroad, you travel, which not only broadens the mind, but does bring in financial gain in different ways, right? Like I consult on DEI issues with companies and institutions, so that might bring in money, but I don't think academic books.
Yeah, totally agree, sir. Totally agree.
And financial gain should be thought of together because that's not the reason I'm writing it.
Absolutely.
I'm writing it so that more people read it, they gain knowledge. That's why I'm in this profession. I was a journalist. I was messing around with people's mind for 20 years. You know, now I'm building more people like me, which is worrying. But that's the reason I'm in teaching, right?
Absolutely agreed, sir. There is so much of hard work involved in writing a book then. So that is why I wanted to understand other aspects also. But indeed, I agree with you, sir, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. We have Dr. Pramod Kumar Pandey from the Assistant Professor in DME Media School. Pramod, sir?
Yeah. Hello, sir. Thank you for sharing all the information. I just have a small question, like, especially the ones who have just finished their PhDs, it usually takes 5 to 6 years for the entire process to get completed. And now the data is already getting a little old and they are in a hurry to get their work published. And like you said, if in case somebody is looking for a good publisher, it takes 1 to 2 years more. It can take up to that much time. So there are things like self-publishing, and there are so many advertisements, so many things emerging like, self-publish within a few days. And some of them claim to be some, big names. So in that case, can that be an option for somebody? And if somebody goes into book publication through that, can that, would people judge that kind of a person, for having a book self-published and against the traditional publishing system?
So I don't want to comment on how the Indian system UGC works currently, though both my parents were professors and my brother's a professor, so I know some of it. But honestly, when I'm looking at somebody's tenure and promotion document, I also see where they got published. So the credibility of the publisher, just like journals, the credibility of, if you're published by Macmillan, Oxford University Press, Routledge, Sage, those are big names. If you got published by, even other local publishers, Rupa Publications, those are established names. But to answer your earlier very important question about what happens when you finish your PhD and you want to get a book out, but it's already 4 years old, right? You do an updated work on it. So for this first book, this actually stemmed out of my PhD, but I had written journal articles. I'd made the cardinal error of getting things out. So I wanted to anyway update it. 2016 data, I'm like ancient. So I redid the survey, which is very difficult because I was asking journalists to take a survey again. And you know how difficult journalists can be in doing anything. And then I had interviewed, I think 18 editors. I interviewed 10 more to see the changes that had happened, because between then and now, people said, hey, remember we told you this that time, we have fixed it. And so there is not only updated data in this book from 2021, but there are references to the future in the epilogue, kind of when you end the movie and this will have to go forward, you leave them with some thoughts that open the door for your next edition, right? And you have to be mindful of that. That's a very good question. Many of us struggle with this, that I've done all this hard work and I definitely want this to be out there, but who's going to read this if this is already 5 years old? And I know that and not everybody writes on things that are, like the history of mass communication during the Telangana movement. Okay, that's not going to change, right? But social media is going to change. Political situations are going to be updated. So yes, update yourself. Do not lose sleep over the fact that one day it's going to be outdated. Everything will be. And it is okay. Human beings understand that you wrote the book 8 months before it saw the light of day. And your last word was written 6 months before it saw light of day. That's fine. Okay. People don't expect that. That's the bad habit we have had thanks to social media, right? That we want everyday updates. I mean, we have stopped waiting for newspapers in the morning, forget magazines, but this is like that. It's your annual report. The best you can do is update it annually or update it every 2 years. So live with that. That's fine. There is still 80% or 90% in your book that people will find great value from. And we can always learn from even the past, even when we are living in the future now. Why did we come here? How did that happen? They're going to read you. What mistakes did we make from that point to now? They're going to read you. There's always going to be value in things that you think are outdated, and that's good. That's you being the perfectionist, which is a good thing, but don't kill yourself over it. It's fine.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Iram Rizvi, you raised hand. Can you just switch on your camera and ask your question? In the meanwhile, I'll take up this question from the chat box. It's from a student, Vinayak Yadav. And Vinayak is, he's very interested in writing. He's also part of our newsletter team. So his question is that what are the future trends in academic book publishing? And I think he means to know, he wants to know that what exactly, topics students should pick up for the future if they're planning something, if they're interested in writing. This is what I think Vinayak means. So if you can just...
and Vinayak is specializing in what area? Because I don't want to say like these are the 10 topics and I don't know what he's doing.
He is Vinayak, if you can switch on your camera, you can also talk about it. But mostly he's writing on recent trends, political writing also. I've read.
Okay. He is in a way is more into journalistic writing or reporting kind.
Okay, no, so there is always scope for political journalism and books or articles about it. Journal articles, for example, there's a lot of interest globally in India, and you know that. It is one of the largest, not just countries and the most populated now, but it's a powerful economy with a powerful political system. It's a democracy that people are curious about because they don't really understand it all the time elsewhere. So you can both do comparative studies. That's something that will be accepted globally as well, as long as you're, let's say, the world's 2 largest democracies, USA and India, and you do an analysis of the 2024 elections in the US versus the Indian elections. Well, that's a large subject. You take a small part of it, right? You take the role of social media in both these elections and whether they influenced urban voters or not. Just giving you some ideas, right? You can do a lot of things. When you compare what happens, you're attracting a wider audience. And as a journalist, you'll understand this. You can either target a smaller audience with something focused, which is great. If you want a larger audience, make sure they're interested in the topic. I don't understand India per se, but oh, okay, so this is how. Now the American also wants to read you, right? And so your books range improves, your journalistic range improves, if you're writing an article. So when you compare, and comparative studies are also accepted in journals, you don't have to do it with the US. You can do it with Pakistan. You can do it with England. As long as you're comparing, you're automatically doing multiple things. You can do a content analysis, which is the safest thing to do because you don't have to expend too much money, of how different newspapers or different websites have done it, or influencers in different countries have talked about political maneuvers. Right now, look at Trump in trouble and how social media is working, versus let's look at something where Modi and Amit Shah were in some sort of trouble with the policy and how that was being dealt with. You got that. So again, in political communication, that's why I wanted specific, instead of telling you, oh, everybody's talking about social media, but I'm not interested. So you can focus it to politics, journalism, and your interest area. Sorry, Dr. Rizvi also had a question.
Yes, Dr. Rizvi. We can't hear you.
इरम तुम्हारा ऑडियो नहीं आ रहा.
थोड़ा loud कर. हाँ.
Now?
नहीं, हाँ.
Am I?
Yes.
Yeah, slightly. I mean,
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. It was such an enlightening session. I think you have resolved all the queries. What my query always remains is that the quality of writing, and how do you think that we can have some more collaborative work from the scholars who have exposure from foreign universities like you, and you've been working with the Indian scholars, so that we might benefit from people like you. And so we can, in future, we could also get publications, the quality publication that you have been already doing. So is there any scope, something like that?
Yeah, first, I would just like to say something. I know that as an Indian, I get a little upset when colleagues in America talk about, American mass media being big, and India is still growing, and that's not true. Indian scholars do really great jobs sitting in India, not just people like me, but sitting in India. Some of the quality of writing, some of the work that you do are stupendous. It's a different matter that every country has its own system and own style. And so much like the so-called third world, we are trying to fit into an American style. And that sometimes hurts us because that's not who we are, but we are trying to be somebody else. Which is why in books, you can be more open. And I'm very happy UGC has more journals coming out with Indian editors or South Asian editors on them. Even global journals now have a lot of people from India. As you know, we are everywhere. So a lot of our Indian folks are editors of these journals. Now, yes, to come back to your core question, collaboration is very much possible. People like me are always open, even senior scholars are always open to collaborating with. All you have to do is send an email saying, and I have an idea. I want to write a journal article on this or a book chapter. Who do you think? Are you interested, or who do you think will be interested? You'll be surprised at how much help we can get if we ask. And me being truly Indian, I'm like all of us, very shy about asking people. And I've realized something in my 12 years here, that you don't know how much you can get by asking, including free rides. Like, who's going to take me to the airport? Come on, they're going to charge me money, right? Oh, you want to go? Yeah, I can take you at 5 in the morning. Not a problem. No questions. Dropped me 100 miles and came back. Just gas cost. I had to ask. So when you ask people, what is the worst that can happen? No.
Yeah, rejection.
Everything else is better than that, right? So that's the worst. Why are you worried? Ask the question And you will be surprised at the amount of collaboration that's there, because the world is looking to India for collaboration. And just as you are looking out, many people here don't know whom to collaborate with,
Yeah.
because
So
there's a gulf in between.
this is the issue. This is the core issue, that the people do not know where to collaborate, with whom to collaborate. So this is the where
So,
people get stuck.
get involved with organizations like SACA, for example. I'm sure you've heard of SACA, South Asia Communication Association. I co-started it. I was a PhD student at that point, and they had recruited me. And 2015, 14, 15, we got it registered in ICA and AJMC. Every year we have, like this year's session, there are some 70 papers being presented. I have recommended something which I'll fight for this year, is to raise some funds to help scholars from South Asia. We will not be rich enough ever to pay for your airfare, but if people come, can we look after them? Those 3 days.
Yeah. My paper is also there in that SACA session of AGMC. I have written it with Pramod Pandey.
Acha, okay, yeah, I know. So I think I have a paper, and I've also a discussant in a session on day one. So yeah, and those sessions are not just the sessions. Just get involved. There's a WhatsApp group as well, of course, and get involved in the emails. You will see on their Facebook page people saying call for papers for a book. I put it out there right now. I think there's a call for paper from Neelam and this one, Deloar's book. And it's an Indo-Bangladesh collaboration, if that is what you want to talk about. And so you may say, "Oh, this is not my interest area," but sooner or later, you will look up someone and say, "I wish I could collaborate with this person." Email. If that person has a huge ego, they will not respond. That's not the worst thing that can happen. If they don't have a huge ego, which they should not, they will respond. And maybe there'll be a collaboration there. Personally speaking, I'm always welcoming emails, phone calls, text, WhatsApp messages from people. And then really, if I can't do anything, I'll say I'm not the person for it. I'll suggest 2 or 3 people. That's what I would do.
Thank you, Professor. One more thing I wanted to ask here is, because most of the students who have joined today are again the students who are studying bachelor's in journalism. So these are undergraduate students, but because we have been doing ICAN for like 6 years now, and students have been introduced to research at very early age, and they are into writing, they are writing articles. Many of them are, they are not reached the level of course, the book, but they are writing, they're trying to write for journals or book chapters. So any tip, any advice you can give when it comes to writing, because some of them really struggle. It's first or the second time they're writing, they are able to do the research, they're able to make the presentations, but when they're writing, they are still learning, they are attending workshops. So anything from your side, any tips which you can give them?
Yeah, at 22, I don't think I could write even 5 lines of journalistic work. So if they're doing it, amazing. I still remember my first job in Asian Age after I finished my master's, and I'm not a master's in journalism, I'm a master's in history from Presidency College. So when I went there, I thought, I have a first-class degree, that makes my collar go up. And I wrote my first piece, and I still remember my chief reporter crumpled it up and threw it back at me. And I opened it, it was full of red. And she said, "The degree doesn't give you the right to write this shit. Write better." And I was so angry at that point, but I kept that for many years to remind me that it's a different thing. Getting a degree, writing well, it's all different things. And every day I should improve. The day I think that this is my best work was 8 months ago and I've not improved on that, I should retire. My best work should always be the last thing that I did, right? Because I'm constantly striving to improve. I think it's very good that they're doing the art of researching, even as undergrad students. One of the problems with good journalism is the lack of research. Because we have very little time and increasingly even lesser time, we're just sourcing it from social media, not even attributing a quote, not seeking permission, just putting it in. I've seen some of the journalism or so-called journalism online, and I cringe when I say, "Oh my God, I don't want to tell people that I work for these companies." But it is good that you are teaching them how to research, even journalistic style. because journalists need to do research to get good copies out. It might mean half a day's research. It might be 7 days or 3 months, depending on if it's an investigative story. Now, it's tricky moving that journalistic style to an academic style of writing. Because in an academic style, you have to set up the context and the theory, the literature review. So I can share a kind of template document. And then also for most journals, what really is the area where most people starting out get chopped off is the methodology section, because reviewers are mostly looking at not what you found, that's your own problem. And that is sad, because what I found is the most exciting thing. But they're looking at, did you employ the right means to go about searching? Because if there's a problem in the methodology, your findings no longer count. So I would tell, because even if you found great things, but you only did a survey of your friends. Like I asked around on Facebook and all my Facebook friends took the survey. That's a skewed sample. So the finding of that survey does not stand, because that is not even a snowball sample, and you have to still justify a snowball sample. And why is it justified? Because this was such a tough area. Like I was doing a research on, let's say, people who are destitutes or homeless, and I don't know so many homeless people. So I knew 3 people and they got me in touch with some others. So that's justified, but not for a student sample. So again, if the methodology is problematic, even if you found really exciting stuff, that's biased, that's skewed. It will never make it in a journal. So be aware of the fact that the foundation of your house is what is most important, not how your living room or your bedroom looks in the end. It will still fall down. The foundation has to be really powerful. And that is the area where I think many of us often are caught wanting, even if we have. And when I'm reviewing articles that, I don't know, it's only Indians, but I get a lot of stuff from Indian scholars because that's who I specialize in. And when I see them, I can see methodology being rushed through. Almost like, you know what I mean? No, it doesn't matter if I know what you mean. You will have to explain what you mean. And that's something that needs patience. And this is common sense, but as we know, common sense is not common. You have to make it understandable. Okay.
Thank you so much. And I think we will need one more session to discuss these issues. These are really important issues. But for today, I would like to close here. Thank you so much once again. And I give it back to my anchors, Ayush and Rishita.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Susmita Bala, Professor and Head of DMA Media School and Chief Associate Convener of ICAN6, to give concluding remarks.
Thank you, Ayush. Thanks, Dr. Dhiman Chattopadhyay, for providing valuable tips for publishing an academic book. We all keep writing and contributing chapters to edited books. But when it comes to writing a solo book, it appears a difficult task. Getting chapters for a book that we plan to edit is also not an easy challenge. Then approaching the publisher and getting the book published. Thanks, Dr. Chattopadhyay, for making the task easy for scholars. Your session has proved really fruitful to all of us. Thanks to all the participants in this session. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you, ma'am. With this, we come to the end of this session. I would like to thank Dr. Dhiman for his valuable time and sharing his experience with us. I extend my gratitude to the management and leadership team of DME. Heartfelt thanks to Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena for his guidance, Dr. Susmita Bala for giving us direction and support at every stage of the conference. Special thanks to the faculty members and staff of Media School for executing all the sessions. I would also like to thank the production and technical team for providing the technical support. Special thanks to the newsletter and media coordination and social media team for the coverage of the event. I would also like to thank the designing team and creative support for creative support. I also wish to thank the administrative staff of DME. Special thanks to our conference partners, knowledge partners, international partners, and media partners. The recording of all the sessions of ICAN6 can be accessed through our official YouTube channel, DME TV, our social media handles, ICAN page and DME page. Subscribe to DME TV. This is all from our side. We will start third day with yoga session to celebrate International Yoga Day at DME campus, Sector 62, Noida. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you so much.